Hello and welcome to another episode of the Kam Johal Show. I hope that you are all enjoying this mixed weather that we're having. We've got quite a serious topic that we want to discuss with you today, and to discuss that with me is a very dear friend of mine, Bal here. Welcome to the show, Bal.
Thank you.
Right. So, divorce, the D word, is on the rise generally. So a few years ago, 1 in 3, now it's about 50-50. And it's rising in our own community. And I really want to try and get to grips with what's happening here, what's changing, and why that is on the increase. It's not a good thing, because family life is disrupted, children's lives are disrupted, finances are a major issue when these things happen. So just before we start, I want to give a big shout out to some of our friends in Manchester who are very avid fans and message me regularly. So hello to you guys, and I hope you enjoy this particular episode, which I should dedicate to you. So, about divorce, painful, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Something you've been through yourself?
I have been, yeah.
Yeah. So children are involved, finances are involved, and divorce is not new. You know, when we were growing up, it's something that white people did, right? It didn't happen in our community, our mums and dads, that generation. It's unheard of, right?
True, yeah.
So why do you think those marriages survive, for start? So why do those marriages work?
Whether they work, I think, is a different thing altogether, but why they probably last, I suppose, as Asians, we're proud people, and I think we care so much about what other people think, and what other people are going to say. I think that has a lot to do with half of these marriages that have probably lasted for however long they have done. Truth is, are people really happy?
That's right. The other thing is, of course, is that, you know, we had much more prevalence of extended family living.
Yeah.
So you perhaps didn't marry, especially for a girl that was coming into a family, you didn't marry just the man, you married his family, didn't you?
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
there was brothers, sisters, in-laws certainly, within that household. So it was, I suppose the relationship wasn't one-on-one as we see a singular family that's living on its own today. So it was a much bigger collective of people, wasn't it? So
absolutely.
The one-on-one time didn't exist in that way.
Yeah, and I think that can have its pluses, you know, as well as its sort of negatives to it as well.
Yeah, but in terms of that relationship, I suppose there's less pressure, isn't there? Because there's lots of other things that are going on in that marriage, as well as the marriage itself.
Yeah.
So the family is a larger collective of people. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, I think that by and large, women of that generation didn't work.
Yeah, true.
Right? So the man of the house would be the breadwinner in most cases, not all obviously. So so there's a financial dependency, isn't there?
Yeah.
Right? So that could be something that, so I think, because when you get to these things, it's never a single factor, is it?
No.
You know, it's a combination of things going on.
Yeah.
So collective family, finances, and of course, what will the neighbours say?
Yeah.
It's a big
Don't you ever
factor.
think that it's also sort of everything seemed in its place back then, you know, whereas now everything's up in the air?
Well, life was simpler, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Right, you know, and the 2.2 children and all the rest of it, and one car, etc. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So now we have, I think the big thing for me is that, you know, my mum and my dad worked in a factory. So they went to work on a Monday morning, came back every night, and Saturdays sometimes my dad would work, but the weekends were family time, weren't they?
Yeah.
No shops were open. So we went to the Gurdwara, or we went to see family and relatives.
Yeah.
You know, we used to come to this part of the world quite a lot, Wolverhampton, where my mum, Maji Honey, live.
Yeah.
So either they were at our house or we were at theirs more often than not.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of family interaction as well, more so than now.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
So where are we now then? So, you know, I'll say host community, you know, for want of a better word. So in nationally, as an average in this country, the divorce rate's about 50-50, right? It used to be 1/3, and it's creeping up. And I think marriage is much more disposable these days, and people are much easier, you know, there's, like we said, there's not the taboos, there perhaps not the financial pressures to walk away. What's your experience?
That's a difficult one. You're making me think back now. To be honest, family, everybody's situation is different. For myself, I'd say family was probably, it was a 50-50. Sort of, sometimes it was a case of, you know what, it's nice to have that involvement. It's nice to sort of have that support network, that you're a part of as well. And then there were other times, like I said, it's the nonsense really, isn't it, that sort of comes in. If there are problems, if there are issues, you tend to ignore everything. It's okay, it'll go away. Feelings are ignored. And it's just a case of, this is how it is,
Okay. What about outside factors, family? I read, and a subject that's very close to my heart is alcohol consumption, especially within our own community.
Yeah.
How much of that do you think plays a part?
From my experience, quite a big part.
Mm-hmm.
And it's seen to be, when the issue is raised, with the spouse or within the family, it just seems to be as if it's a done thing.
Yes.
That
it's the norm, isn't it?
It's the norm,
That's
exactly.
What they do.
And it should be tolerated, it should be accepted, when in fact it shouldn't.
Do you think that's the fault of the previous generation, our mum's generation of women that accepted that in our fathers?
Potentially, yes. There could be an element of that, but also I'm a strong believer that, we've all moved forward with the times, and everybody's responsible for themselves at the end of the day. And if you as a person can see that you're inflicting pain on another through that consumption, then surely you'd want to do something about it. Well, the right person would want to do something about it.
Yeah. Is it a problem that's big enough that people should be looking for treatment now, or is it something that's, why is it happening? It seems to be like a custom of our community.
Yeah.
Particularly at weddings, and we've got a lot of weddings going on right now.
I know, exactly. But, again, I do feel sorry for the men as well, because if they were seen to be going to get help for something, like alcohol, excessive alcohol consumption, when it's there in front of them 24/7, every single occasion, it's almost expected. It's like a manly thing, how it's seen. How is that person supposed to go and ask for help?
It's not easy, is it? No. We've got a lot of machoism going on. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we do associate as a community non-alcoholic consumption as a weakness. But our religion actually says do not drink alcohol.
Yeah.
So does the community, do the Gurdwaras have a bigger role to play?
I wouldn't know, because to be honest, I do think now there's a sort of, again, it's a 50-50. 50% of us will still go to the Gurdwara. Well, what about the other 50 that don't go?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay. So behaviour is not acceptable. Do you think that behaviour was what wasn't acceptable to you? Do you think your mother would have expected that?
Yeah, I think they were a lot more tolerable than today's generations.
Yeah.
Because I think it was always seen as the done thing, and it's the husband, he's sort of head of house. What he says goes. Things were very different, sort of in our parents' sort of time and their marriage and what they were experiencing. And what's happening is slowly over the years, things are changing. The world's changing. They're starting to realise that it's not just sort of, it's a bit more of an equal world. But with that equality, it's the challenges are arising. Because whereas in the wife probably would have stayed at home, been a homemaker, dal, roti, everything on the table, now she's almost having to, even, forget the equality thing, with the way things are in today's world, it's you can't survive on one person working.
Definitely not. No, the days of the wife working and that being a luxury for that family. It's essential now. Both people work, right?
Exactly, it's needed.
So that brings different pressures, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, do you also think that it could be the fact that we as a community treat our boys a little bit differently when they're growing up, the mothers and fathers. So is this problem does it start much earlier than
it definitely
by
does.
the time they get to marriage?
Yeah, it definitely does. The majority, I would say, I'm sure there's a minority out there that is raising their children their sons to sort of see it differently, but there's a majority out there that is still very much sort of wrapping their sons in cotton wool, so to speak, and just sort of allowing them to get away with everything and anything. It's okay because he's a boy. It's okay. Who's going to say something? He's a boy. He's a guy. My children, totally different, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's still very much there.
Interesting. So there's the element of the upbringing.
Yeah.
There's the element of, a community of people that seems to consume an awful lot of alcohol.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? And the thing that obviously I drank for a long time, but the thing that I can't and didn't work out, and I knew that is a concoction of problems, is that any gathering we have, it's about 2/3, 1/3. And what I mean by that is 1/3 are guys and 2/3 are women and kids. So we've got 1/3 that's literally bathing in booze, and we've got the other 2/3 that generally, if the ladies are drinking, they're generally drinking very, very responsibly, and the kids don't drink. So that just doesn't go together, does it?
No.
Right? It's a recipe for disaster, I think.
It's true. Sometimes it makes me think, is that why men sit on one side and women sit on the other side?
Makes life easier, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Keep them away. Yeah. But what are the other issues? Because, the thing is this, from everything that I have researched, it tends to be the women of our community, and that's all I can talk about, that are generally filing for divorce are saying, I've had enough, and guys are not. And by the way, guys, I want you to have your say. So I've got no volunteers right now because it seems to be the ladies that talk about the D word. If you're a divorced gentleman, I'd love for you to contact me or the station and come in the next week, 2 weeks, whenever you have time. I would love to do a show and get that perspective because men don't talk very often. No,
it's true. Right? And I think the reason why you're saying it's more women sort of bringing those cases to the table now is because I think women have started to find their voices as well. Very much so. They're understanding that, they have a voice, they have rights themselves, and I'm not this whole women's advocate thing, but
sure.
At the end of the day, come on, compared to sort of how it used to be, quite rightly so, the amount of sort of domestic abuse cases, that have been found over sort of the years, it's not right. That's not a marriage.
No. So we touch upon another taboo subject especially in our community. Generally, it's swept under the carpet. So, how much domestic violence do you think is going on generally, and how much of it is alcohol fueled?
Well, I couldn't say because I don't know the statistics on that.
Of course.
But my personal sort of opinion on it would be quite a lot, Cam. Probably more than what we think.
Yeah.
Alcohol related to non-alcohol related. I'd probably say alcohol related is more.
Yeah.
Just from my own experiences, friends, family members who have also experienced, the same sort of things going on. It seems to be the majority of cases that I know of, they're all alcohol related. Yeah.
And yet, I can tell you hand on heart, I don't hear of anybody in my community that I know personally speaking of either the man, or I don't hear it through my family that this man, this happens behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So it's certainly not talked about, is it?
No, that's the problem.
So what do you think is happening? Do you think women are just, instead of trying to address the issue of whether it's domestic violence, the other big thing is finances.
Absolutely.
Right? So, I'm financial services is my thing. So 85% of relationship problems are based around finances.
Strain, yeah.
Yeah, and as you rightly said, it's lack of finances, not because of an abundance of finances, right?
Yeah.
So But let's take this thing of domestic violence caused through alcohol and other mental issues.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's not the only cause of distress, right?
No.
So do you think that when a woman particularly files for divorce, has she explored those? Do you think she's actually gone down the route of sitting down, talking to this guy and said, listen, Mr. Husband, we need to address this. You got a problem here, you got a problem here, you got a problem here. Because, regardless of what you say, it doesn't matter, what your creed or caste or colour is, divorce is painful. Nobody wants to file for divorce today.
Well, absolutely. To be honest, I can only speak from my experience.
Yeah.
That I think divorce is the absolute final option. Prior to that, yes, you would have tried to, seek help, whether it be from family, whether it be from professional services, and just, trying to support, trying to help, trying to get, the other half to understand, that what they're doing and, how it's making you feel. But the problem is, like I said, and you're quite right, because I think it starts with the financial sort of strains. That leads to alcohol, because men don't know how to cope, so they tend to turn to the alcohol. That's not helping the situation, and it's just sort of, it's like step by step, it just goes, from one bad situation to several sort of bad situations combined. And the problem is when you have other things such as, other influences, okay, on top of the initial, probably what could have been the first thing, which was financial strain, you're hitting a brick wall. It's trying to get through to a brick wall.
How much, so, as we said, you've been through this process.
Yeah.
How much it was part of the problem that there was denial there on your partner's side, that just refused to admit that there was any problems?
A very large part,
And do you think that would have helped if he'd have said, listen, you know what, I've got problems with whatever it might be, finances, mental illness or alcohol dependency. Do you think that would have helped?
Well, the thing is, like I said, there's so many different sort of scenarios, but when you're faced with somebody that's also narcissistic, narcissists don't believe that they have a problem or they're doing anything wrong. So it is literally like hitting a brick wall. So no matter how much you try and explain something, no matter how much something might be blatantly in front of that person saying, do you see? For 2 seconds, they might say, oh, right, really sorry, blah-de-blah-de-blah, this won't happen again.
Yeah.
Done again.
Okay. Narcissism.
Yeah, there's another one.
Mental illness?
I'd call that
or
a
a
mental
habit
illness.
or a trait?
I would call narcissists people that do have a mental illness. I mean, how can you, there's so many different things that come with a narcissist, that just aren't right.
So, do you think these problems existed all the time, including for our mothers, and women are now speaking out about it, or do you think there's more problems now than there were in the past?
I couldn't say, to be fair. I think I think upbringing has a great deal to do with sort of situations and outcomes and people's mentality and sort of attitudes as well, and if the upbringing, personally, if there was something wrong there, if there was a break in the link there, then obviously that's going to affect sort of further down the line. But then on the other hand, Cam, you think to yourself, grown adult, has a mind of their own, should know better anyway.
Yeah. I think the problem is when you're caught up in that situation, it's like being caught up in a typhoon. Your feet aren't even touching the ground. I don't think anybody gets married to get divorced.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think anybody's in a relationship to be nasty and all of those things. Right. Because we're basically good human beings trying to do the best we can, and sometimes those things are not good enough and they turn out to be bad things. Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm a big believer in the fact that basically, look, God made us, right? Vaheguru made us. So why would he or she make us anything other than perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So it's circumstances and our surroundings that do those things, right? So we've got all of those issues going on, right? So do you think there's more financial pressure on families? As we already said, that it's now a necessity for both parties to be working.
Yeah.
You know, it's no longer a luxury. I remember, you know, when I was very, very young, my mum started working and it was unheard of. Women just didn't go out to work. You know, so it was quite a strange thing for your mum to be working whilst your aunts were at home. I mean, eventually they all started.
Yeah.
Right? But today it's just not an option for families.
Yeah.
So how much of the fact that we live in a very materialistic world, we want to compete with the things next door, right?
Everything's a competition.
How much of that do you think is making people unhappy and therefore ultimately leads to a breakdown in their relationship?
A lot of it, because at the end of the day, if you're constantly competing with others, you know, where does it stop? Where do you draw the line? You know, you're basing your life around what somebody else is doing or what somebody else has. You know, it's like they can't be content with just what it is that they have. You know, we think back to sort of our parents' generation, and yes, it was so much simpler. And I think some of those values, you know, if we'd have sort of kept those today in marriages, maybe they wouldn't have, you know, well, the divorce rate wouldn't be rising, would it? So clearly there was something in that worked.
I think we had a more sharing community. I think people were less single family unit. It's just us. It was more about a collective.
Yeah.
You
and
know?
I get the whole, you know, couples want their independence now, so they're moving out, they're getting their own homes and they're having their own families. I totally get that, and you know, can appreciate the feeling of feeling like you're living with 10 other people, you know. But at the end of the day, I think what they need to do is try and find that balance, you know, instead of sort of going right again. I mean, move out at the right time, or, you know, move out and don't go sort of on the other side of the world, or, you know, different city or so. I think all it is, I think we've lost our family connections. That's what it is.
Yeah.
We've separated ourselves not just from the household, but we've separated ourselves in general.
From the community.
From the community, from your family.
I think the big problem with that comes from the fact that on average, I think it's 77 miles is the distance from where the average child ends up working or at university from their parents. And that's across the nation.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So like you said, you know, I mean, I've got twins, as you know. They're both in London.
Yeah.
They're 100 miles away from my home.
Yeah.
So how often are they actually going to come?
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, and of course, as their roots get deeper and deeper where they live, they begin to form their own community, their own relationships, perhaps marriage and family, then that gets less and less and less.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing that my parents could never understand was that we were busy with twins. So we can't be around every night. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
But that's now going to happen to me. So it's interesting in terms of, you know, where that goes. So I think I think what's happening is that we're integrating more into the general community, and the general community's problems are now becoming our problems.
Yeah.
Which is only natural, right? Tell me about the other thing, the innocent victims in this, children.
Yeah.
Right? How? Because I believe you had your son, didn't you? You know, when that was happening.
Yeah.
How did that affect him, and how did you and your husband feel about that?
Okay, well, I mean, my son was literally weeks old.
Okay.
So he wouldn't have...
No knowledge whatsoever. Great.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a blessing in disguise, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Looking back now, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it was actually having my son that made me realise what was required.
Interesting, isn't it? So you drew strength. But that goes back, doesn't it, to the fact that we're willing to suffer a lot ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when we see a loved one suffering,
Yeah.
we have to take action, don't we?
That's it. And I think that's me down to a T. Like, I can take it, that's fine, no problem. And all those years it was fine.
Yes.
You know, I didn't have my son straight away after, you know, getting married. It was 5 years in. So for 5 years I've taken it, and 6 weeks into my son being born, it was like, no.
Yes.
So
can I ask you a question, maybe a bit too personal, you may not want to answer it, and I respect you if you don't. So you were married for 5 years. These problems were there then.
Yeah.
Did you not feel that it was time to get out before you fell pregnant and had a child? Or sometimes, and again, I respect your decision, and I realise how personal it is, or did you think that starting a family would actually help the relationship?
It's that, it's what you've been groomed with as you've grown up. What are people going to say?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So you're always thinking, God, well, I got into this, I'm married, you know. You don't back out now, do you? Once you're married, you're married.
Yes.
That's the thinking. And you make it work.
Yes.
You know.
Okay. I'm privy to the knowledge, so I'll ask the question. So you married out of choice, it wasn't an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
Did that put more pressure on you to make it work?
Absolutely.
Because now you can't say to your mum and dad,
it's your fault. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
You just can't do that, can you?
No,
right?
no.
And because I didn't have an arranged marriage, and I actually had the conversation. I remember that we spoke. Listen, we can't blame anybody for this now, right? We're in it. We need to make it work.
Right? Like they say, you made your bed, you lie in it.
Yeah, because there's always somebody, aren't there? There's always relatives that disapprove.
Yeah.
Right. So those disapprove. You can just see them the nodding, can't you? I told you so.
I told you. That's it.
Another added pressure, isn't there, to stay in a bad relationship that's clearly not working?
Yeah.
Right? And so, as you've gotten older, do you think that your confidence has grown? Do you feel surprised at what you put up with back then?
I'm very surprised with what I put up with. But what happens is, when you become a mother, and I would hope that's with any parent, when you become a parent, you have a responsibility.
Of course.
And you have a responsibility to your children. Okay? If somebody else has done wrong in the way they've raised theirs, that's one thing. But you shouldn't be making the same mistake with your children. So where I drew strength from was thinking, right, okay, now let me show you what a good human being is. You know, how you should be. He should be considerate about other people's feelings. You know, how you shouldn't be turning to sort of alcohol or what have you. Family is important. No matter what, family is important, and you should be able to come to your family for support if ever you need it. All these things that I could see doesn't always happen, you know, elsewhere, or wasn't happening within my experience of marriage. I just thought, no, this can't be the example. My children can't grow up thinking it's okay.
This is okay.
To sort of raise your hand to a female or drink your problems away, you know, whatever it might be. That's not what I can teach them. You know.
You know, about one thing really surprises me. You know, we've had this show for over a year now. We've interviewed some very successful males and females. And obviously, you know, the show is about showcasing entrepreneurship in our community. So by and large, females such as yourselves are leaders in their own field, and they're entrepreneurs, or they've started something absolutely wonderful that we think, you know, our community should be aware of. It shocks me how many times somebody sat here and talked about domestic violence of really successful females. What must that be like for somebody that's sort of shy and retiring and hasn't got the finances and the confidence, you think, of the type of guests that we've had on this show? What do you think that's like for an average girl, you know, that's gotten into a large family where her voice isn't being heard? She's perhaps not best educated, doesn't have an amazing career, doesn't have amazing choices in life. What do you think, you know, can you put yourself in those shoes, and what on earth she would be going through in this situation?
She'd be scared. It'd be extremely difficult, you know. I wasn't always in this situation, Cam.
Of course.
So I can relate to that person that sat there, probably doesn't have any support, who is, you know, tied down with everything that people could possibly say and throw at her. And all I have to say is, you know, looking back, I wish I'd taken the choice a lot sooner.
Sure.
You know, but okay, it took for, you know, my son to come along to realise and say, well, no, not happening. But, you know, for that individual, they need to find the strength. They've got it. They've got it within. But they need to stop thinking. The way you've got to look at it is sometimes we get so caught up in looking after other people, we forget to look after ourselves, you know, and they need to stop worrying about other people. And you do. It sounds selfish, but it isn't. You need to put yourself first as well.
Sure. Okay, so another taboo thing, and I'm sure, you know, I'm a Sikh and Bal is a Sikh, so we pride ourselves on having amazing community and amazing family.
Yeah.
But if you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, you'll be saying exactly the same, that we're an amazing community and we're like this. How much community help, how much was your family there for you when you went home and said to whoever it was, say, listen, this isn't working, I'm going to file for divorce?
No, at that point, it was a sole decision. It didn't involve...
Why didn't you go to your family?
Personal reasons.
Okay. Now, so that girl that's like not as strong as you are, hasn't got the finances, does she go to her family or not? Do you think family is there? Because from everything that I've heard and read, especially in our community, the worst people are the girl's family, to stop her and say, don't worry about it, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
What will people think? If
you have family, or not even just family, but if you have anybody that you can turn to, then absolutely I would say do that. You know, it's a very, very difficult situation to be coming out of alone, you know. But definitely, absolutely. I mean, if you've got supportive family around you, then hopefully that's what you need. You need somebody there, sort of by your side, you know, helping you through that difficult time. But if you're somebody that doesn't, you know, then yes, of course, it's going to be 10 times more scary, because it's about security. You had it prior to being married when you were at home. Your parents were your security. The moment you've flown the nest and you've gone into another home, they become your security. That's gone now. You know, this is your security. So if this is where your problems lie and you're not going to get the support from this side, you've got nobody.
No.
You know, and that the only thing that I can say there is you've got to turn to, you know, the professional services out there that are able to help you, you know, regardless whatever it is that you're going through.
Do you think they're adequate?
I do.
Okay, so you think that, so if you haven't got anybody, your
there's
family...
always somebody.
Because I think, you know...
It may not be somebody that you know.
Yeah.
But there's always somebody.
And isn't that strange? Strangers can sometimes be kinder than your own family.
Absolutely.
Because I think what happens
you.
is... Yeah, I was going to say the problem is, I think the problem is going really close to home.
Yeah.
And your parents and your siblings are the ones, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think the problem is that those people start thinking of themselves rather than you.
Yeah. And at one point, Kam, I think it's about them understanding as well. So, you know, don't get me wrong, at one point, you know, I did go to family members, and you've got to explain the whole thing because you're so used to closing and hiding everything away, aren't you? So the moment this comes to boiling point and you can't take it anymore, you've got to tell them about the last how many years, you know, and what's been going on, and they don't get it, and they're like, no, there's got to be something that you haven't tried here, and you're like, you're just not going to get it.
Okay.
You know?
Now tell me, what was your experience of that? So you've made the decision. It's a sole decision, as you said.
Yeah.
So now you've got to go home and tell your parents at some point.
Yeah. At one point, I was being told, you know what, just give it another 3 months. Give it another 3 months. You know, let him get a job, and let him show you this, and let him, you know, blah, and he'll stop doing this and he'll stop doing that. And you know, when you're just so sure of it, and you're just like, seriously, are you going to make me do another 3 months? You know, that sounds like a life sentence when you've been going through what you've been going through. I did.
You did the other 3 months?
I still did it.
Yeah. I think the problem is this, right? And we think, you know, why are you doing this? Because obviously that's fresh news to that individual, whoever you've told.
Yeah, but they just don't get it.
No,
you know?
no. Well, it's shock, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's shock. Did they say to you, why didn't you speak up about this earlier? Did anybody say that to you?
No.
So nobody said, listen, Val, why didn't you come to me 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Friends did.
Mm.
But I didn't even tell friends.
Why not? Look, you're a very confident woman now.
Yeah.
So you would have had some of these traits would still
Yeah.
exist. Tell me something. Was that before or after you became a policewoman?
After.
After. So you'd done 4.5 years
Yes,
as a policewoman.
this is why.
Arresting big burly blokes.
Absolutely. Oh, I could have dealt with him, but, it's
No,
one
not
of
that
those.
one. It's not that kind of show.
I could have dealt with him, but no, look, at heart, I am a bit of a traditionalist as well, and I think I've always known that I've got the strength sort of within to deal with whatever situation comes my way. And clearly, in one respect, I did, because I had to deal with that for how many years, and that's strength in itself anyway. Probably a bit of stupidity too, but a lot of strength was required for that.
As a female with an unusual career, shall we call it, did you do what some of us used to do when we were kids at school, that we had this completely different life at school, and then we had this completely separate life at home? So as a obviously as a policewoman, you're doing shifts, weekends, and all that kind of stuff. Did you go home and be the traditional wife role? Or,
I always felt that sort of, the moment I walked through the door, it switched. Now I'm the wife, now I'm the daughter-in-law. And I was happy to do that. That's, that wasn't a problem. Yeah, it very much did. Oh, well, obviously I've got nothing to sort of bring back. Well, I shouldn't be, bringing anything back with me. But I came home, and to me, that was like, my sort of end of day, like anyone else would have finished their day from work.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Except the thing is, as guys, me included, come home and chill and watch some sports, right?
And we don't. We stop making the roti.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it's changing now, and guys are being far more attentive.
Yeah, they are.
And I think, my son cooks. It's like incredible, I have a problem making a cup of tea.
Yeah.
But that's how life is.
I think guys have become better cooks, actually.
Yes, of course. Well, the best chefs in the world are men. Are they not? Right? So how do we go forward? Because this is a trend that really we could do with reversing. Yeah. Because I think, depending on ages and what's going on, the real victims are always children. And I think as doesn't matter how old you are, you still look to your parents. Yeah. Right? So 2 questions really. So what is the answer? Is there something that we can do to reverse this trend? And the other thing is that what do you then do? So divorce has happened, right? So your son lives with you. So your ex, so tomorrow your son goes to university, has the big days, graduation, marriage, birth of children, how easy or difficult is it? I mean, will your ex-husband be there on those important days or not?
Well, I think rather sort of speaking about sort of how I would feel on those days, I think that the more important issue is what you highlighted, the children and the impact on the children. So first and foremost, I think our parents play a big role, because with this fear of not being able to speak up, because the whole topic is about divorce and in our communities and why is it on the rise, with the fear of the fact that people are afraid, women are afraid or men are afraid, because I know it's on both sides.
Of course.
Men are afraid as well to speak up. Why are they afraid? Why should they feel afraid to speak up and say, I'm not happy? Okay? Because that blockage is there, it's impacting other people's lives, it's impacting his life or her life, and it's going to impact the kids' lives as well. It actually, I don't see impacting the extended family.
No.
Okay?
No.
It's that immediate family that it's impacting, and just them alone, because The kids are going to see mum and dad don't get on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's naturally going to have its toll anyway. Who
Sure.
wants to see that? Okay. If you were to approach your parents and all they want to do is sort of, no, you know, what are people going to say? Or you guys can sort this out and what have you. I think parents play a big role in also understanding that, you know what, you're not committing a crime because two people do not work together.
Mm.
You know, even if you take away the whole, you know, alcohol, narcissistic people and financial strains, you take all those problems away. If two people just do not work together, okay, that is not their fault.
No.
You know, you don't know somebody until you live with them.
That's right.
And in our culture, you're only living with them when you're married.
Yeah.
You know.
You said something there that it's not their fault.
Yeah.
Do you think divorce ends up being very an argumentative, almost warlike situation where, you know, one party tries to apportion blame?
Because our society likes to find blame and point blame on people. So it's going to be, oh, I bet she did this, or I'll bet he did that.
Yeah.
There has to be something. No way do I know anybody that would probably believe two Asians, you know, as a couple turning around going, we just don't love each other, do we? Or we just don't have any common ground, and we don't work, and we're not happy, are we?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
so
would that ever happen?
Well, it should do, shouldn't it?
Should
if that's the case, then
Yeah.
that should be what you should
It
say
should
instead
be.
of
You could
saying
have
he
a
said, she
healthier
said.
relationship,
Yeah.
you know, and you could still co-parent as mum and dad and stand as mum and dad to the children, you know, which I bet you they would prefer so much more.
Of course.
You know,
Of course.
you'd get on so much more,
Yeah.
you know.
So your son was very, very young when you decided to end the marriage. Did your husband play any role in his upbringing?
No.
Or so had no contact, etc. So what do you see? So what happens when your son turns 18 and wants to know his dad or anything like that? How would that affect you, do you think?
Well, don't get me wrong, 10 years later,
Yeah.
you know, I received something in the post. All of a sudden, he remembered he had a son.
Okay.
You know, I don't know what happened there.
Conscience?
No, actually, I think he saw what he had missed out on through friends and family.
Yeah. Why not regret? Everybody's
and
human,
what
right?
I'm proud of what I've sort of raised and brought up, he'd lost the ability to actually, you know,
Were
have
you
the say.
upset?
That he'd got in touch.
Yeah.
I was actually disgusted, if
Yeah.
I'm honest.
Yeah.
I was disgusted.
Yeah.
But
and did you sort of want to protect your son? Do you think?
I was a firm believer. I never ever told my son. To this day, my son doesn't know why
Sure.
I went for a divorce.
Yeah.
Because I was a firm believer that my children are competent enough to understand and logically come to a decision themselves as to why they're not in the picture, without me having to say so, because his absence spoke volume.
Yes.
His no choice of trying to make contact spoke volume. No letters, no cards, nothing. Spoke bigger volume than me trying to run him down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What does the future hold, Val?
In what term?
Yourself, you know, you're a mother of two.
Yeah.
You've got a fantastic business.
Yeah.
You know, coming out of it, what happens, and what would you say to somebody that's sitting on their sofa today thinking, oh my God, I need to get out of this?
It was the happiest decision I'd ever taken, the best decision I'd ever taken. I grew as a person.
Yeah.
I realised even more my strengths, you know, and believe you me, I'm happier.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's all we want, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all we want. So really, really interesting in terms of how you've evolved as a person. And, you know, we obviously know that you have your own business. Did you didn't have your business during the divorce or at that point, so you started your business after. Do you think you would have started if that marriage had continued?
No. I was too held down.
That was going to be my next
Yeah,
question.
I was
it?
too held
Do you
down.
think it would have been because you didn't want to, or you weren't
No,
able to, or allowed to?
I wouldn't have been able to with the constant issues that I've experienced. You know, there's that whole insecurities. You know, insecurities from the other half that I just thought, well, looking back, you know, I'm thinking, well, that was ridiculous. I could have done this a hell of a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, if I've come to where I am today, now, God knows where I would have been if I'd have started earlier.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but having said that, of course, that could have been the catalyst for the drive, because now you don't have somebody else to lean on for income and all the rest of that. So, but do you think because he was there that you weren't as determined as you are?
No. I think I was always, I think in the back of my head, I was always thinking, is this ever going to change? How is it ever going to change? You know, I'm a very sort of goal-orientated type of person. You know, I love challenges. I love to sort of see what I can do. And I think, you know, in my earlier days, even prior to being married, when I was in the police force, it's these kind of things. I like to see what can Belle achieve.
Yes.
You know, what can she do? So quite clearly, I was on my path, doing what I'm doing, and then obviously I get married. That becomes a problem. You know, although initially it was stated that it wouldn't be a problem. You know, the career wouldn't be a problem, and then all of a sudden, the days that I come back, and I get it, I'm back in a uniform. You can see a uniform. You know, it's a different thing and it's a different experience. You know, but it became a problem. My success became a problem.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? That
Yeah.
happens. That happens.
So that was never going to sort of evolve into anything.
All's well that ends well, right?
Absolutely.
You're in a great position.
Yeah.
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 You know, you've got two beautiful boys.
Yeah.
Successful. So things do turn out well, right?
Of course.
So, end of another show. So time waits for no man. Guys, I've been fascinated to discover this story, and thank you so much. I know some of it was quite personal, and for sharing that, but it helps people in the audience. Guys, I want to hear from you. So we've heard that side of it. So, you know, if you're sitting there thinking, no, right? It's all their fault. Come on, talk. We don't talk very often. Guys don't talk. So come, especially in our own community, you know, but the show's open to anybody. It doesn't matter, you know, what background you are, what religion you are. Get in touch with me. And we touched on alcohol, been a big thing. So I posted a couple of very, very big posts in LinkedIn and Facebook this week regarding my own alcohol journey. And I've been spurred on to start a support group. So that's live and kicking on Facebook right now. So if you have an issue and you want some help, I'm not qualified, I don't do any medical stuff. But if you want some help with a community of people that we're building, in order to help with alcohol, I think something will come out of this, and we'll do some more collaborations and some more programs related specifically to alcohol within our community, because it is a huge issue. And now that we've related it to domestic situations of divorce, of financial pressures, medical things, pressures on parents, you know, which parent wants to see their child suffering, and worse still, as I've witnessed friends of mine actually, you know, losing their life to alcohol and having to deal with that as a parent. You know, it's got to be 100 times harder than the thing happening the other way around. So lots of issues for us to discuss. So that means we have lots more shows. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I look forward to seeing you again. And please get in touch, all my brothers that want to have their say on this issue and others like it. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.